Good morning. How are you today? Well, today is the second day of spring. Those of you who may have mistakenly relied upon my statement yesterday that today was spring, you probably all knew and were too polite to tell me that I was wrong. One person did very kindly, one of my Twitter friends. So today is the second day of spring, and it's as wonderful a day as it was yesterday. So welcome to the second day of spring. I've now said that enough to pay fealty to those who correctly indicated I got it wrong yesterday. I'm thinking about what I'm going to say in my podcast today. That's one of the reasons that walking is such a great thing to do. You get a chance to meditate when you're not talking. Although I do think when I'm talking, so that's helpful. Number one up is the situation in Georgia. I am fascinated by the conflict of those who would try to shame the victims and elevate the shooter in some way as vulnerable when the evangelical church instilled in him these values that I believe diminished women generally and Asians in particular as perhaps being less or not Christian at all as a stereotype. And so those who are anxious to declare this a hate crime, well, it's certainly a hate crime. And when you survey the individuals, they're sympathetic, they're tied to each other by love and other things, by work, by achievements. And none of this seems to have been appreciated in the general media. I don't want to be too unfair because I don't know everything that's in the media, but it reminded me of a book that I'll discuss, Thornton Wilder's Bridge of San Luis Rey. I don't know if you ever read it. The man was an artist when it came to writing. And in this one in particular, a Brother Juniper sets out to investigate how people fell on a failed rope bridge across a chasm in Peru. He spent 6 years on this, trying to ask the question, what was God's plan? Why did they die when they did? And at the end of it, and I'll discuss this, so you should listen to the podcast, I'll tell you what he decided. But I read this thing in high school about 4 times looking for that answer. And I will say this about the victims, because I did get a chance to look at them a little bit earlier. They each have stories that defy the shaming that's going on. So I thought that would be worth talking about. The second thing that interests me is what we're going to do about the criminals from Trump's regime, what they did wrong and so forth. And it seems to me that there are opportunities that perhaps are being explored. For example, let's take Steve Bannon. He was pardoned for his crimes in New York, basically a fraud on people who wanted to contribute money to put up the wall. Okay. And he's been seeking to have those charges dismissed because of the pardon. His attorney, Bob Costello, whom I knew years ago, because we served together in the Southern District of New York, he represents Bannon. And he earlier represented Rudy Giuliani, maybe he still does, because, again, he served with Rudy and they're friends. He said something that was pretty interesting, which was that, a man is innocent until proven guilty, and he, Bannon, will never be proven guilty. But that's not exactly right. I said this yesterday. What is the case is when you accept the pardon, you have basically admitted that you committed the crime for which you're being pardoned. Now, here's the thing. Double jeopardy is, well, once a trial begins, often, almost always, that's treated as jeopardy attaches. And so you can't then, again, be prosecuted for the same offense. And there are different rules between sovereigns, meaning that if the federal government prosecutes you, maybe the state still can, okay? But Steve Bannon, jeopardy never attached. So he could be prosecuted stateside for the same offense that he was being prosecuted but pardoned on the federal side. And there are other people that are standing naked before the law, probably because they didn't want to admit to any crimes. Rudy Giuliani is one. He's also in the Southern District of New York. Now, there are others, I think of Flynn and Stone, who have been pardoned for actual offenses for which they were convicted, for which jeopardy did attach. But both may have exposure for whatever they did involving the insurrection. So there are these marvelous opportunities, but I think if we're going to focus on anything like a laser beam, it's to zero in on Trump as the head of the snake and not mess around. Bring that case in the Southern District of New York involving the woman who basically extorted money from him, so she'd remain silent in connection with the election. So there's an opportunity here, and I think we should be seizing it, and maybe we are. We'll find out in the days and weeks ahead. But we could have done this in January, on January 22nd, and if I'd been the prosecutor, we probably would have. Some may call that reckless. I don't think so. I think the stuff is all laid out there. And I think there's like a fear of talking about what's really important. Like, why aren't we talking about the evangelical churches in Georgia? Why aren't we talking about prosecuting these people in the here and now? So, anyhow, I resume my walk to think about what I really will say in the podcast. And I hope you're well today, and I hope you'll get out, and spring is great where you are as where I am. Bye-bye.